All right, we are here crashing a Titleist ball content shoot. Nice enough to spend a few minutes with us, Mr. Scottie Scheffler, Mr. Jordan Spieth. All right, my first question. I think the last time you were the number one player in the world, Jordan, was 2016, I believe. You're sitting next to the number one player in the world. What advice would you give as someone who's been there and to someone that is currently there? What would your advice be to Scottie Scheffler? What would you say to him?
Probably don't go 7 years without being number one in the world. It's a lot more fun when you are.
What would you tell Jordan Spieth at number one from 2016?
How much time do you have?
I got time. How much time do you guys have?
Yeah. No, I think that was a goal as a kid, but it wasn't you obviously want to hold on to it but it's not because you want to hold on to I never felt it was I wanted to hold on to the ranking. It was I want to win this golf tournament because I want to win this tournament, and that just kind of comes with it. He's playing the most consistent golf of anybody in the world in the biggest events and winning them, so that the rankings then show that. I was more obsessed with it in junior golf than I was professionally, but it was certainly a goal to reach it, and it is still. But via shot by shot, tournament by tournament, I actually don't really even know how they work. I know it's a 2-year cycle, but I don't know how it's weighted. I don't know how many points a major has versus a regular event. And so, in other words, it's play as well as you can, as often as you can, and it takes care of itself.
Does the ranking mean anything to you, Scotty?
I mean, it's a nice accolade to have, but as far as day-to-day stuff, no. I mean, it's nice to have that accomplishment, but at the end of the day, I don't get any strokes in the next tournament, and if I spend time thinking about being number one, I'm probably going to be out of there pretty quick.
I was going to say, what's the balance? Like, you can't ignore the heater you've been on lately, hitting the golf ball. What's the balance, right, like of, I don't want to say staying humble, but like staying focused on it, yet, acknowledging what the heater that you're on? Like, what's that been like to go through?
I just try not to pay attention to that kind of stuff. I've always been kind of a stay in my own lane kind of guy, and I've been fortunate to be surrounded by guys like Jordan and guys that have, kind of done this stuff before me that I can bounce stuff off of. And, I have a great caddy and Teddy that helps me out with all that kind of stuff, whether it's expectations or, how to deal with media, all different kinds of stuff. And usually just stay in my own lane and keep doing what I'm doing.
What's RV life been like for you? Do you drive this thing from event to event?
I've never driven it.
Okay.
We've ridden in it between events, Florida Swings, Hilton Head to Augusta. It's been great. It's like having a hotel, your own hotel suite every week, but you get to put in your own bed and have it made up the way you want. I will say, like, the West Coast this year was pretty bad weather for the West Coast, and so it was kind of a mess there. It's a little more crowded in California, so we were a little further away at a couple events. And then when we got to Florida, the weather was fantastic, so we could open up the awnings, the TV outside, all the toys outside, and it's been really nice just having consistency week in and week out, and not relying on certain hotels or houses and stuff. But I'm not sure how long it'll last because we have a second one coming, and I don't see how you possibly do it with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old on it at different sleep schedules and all that. So it may be short-lived, but it's been a blast this year.
I'm going to ask you guys to kind of riff on each other a little bit here, and there's a lot of commentary online just about Scotty's action, the foot action. It's different, it's unique, but we kind of hear the same stuff when we tune on TV as to what we see. How would you describe what has made his golf swing so successful? Because it looks unorthodox, I think, to some of us. I think you would probably hear that a lot, Scotty.
Well, I think the footwork is a result of what it's necessary for him to do for the consistency he has. He's got to get off that right side totally onto the left, and he's able to hit, play that super consistent kind of cut shot with the driver that he has, and then he's able to work the ball both ways at a very consistent level. I think the tempo, the set, Scotty's a grinder. He's always been somebody who, if anything, someone's had to pull him off the range versus ask him to practice more. And when that happens, I feel like what he's doing is he's just getting that same rhythm, that same tempo, making sure that the timing of when things are set. I'm speaking for him when he's right here, but to me it seems like, it's his way. He knows how it works for him. When I remember the same thing kind of happening to me on my left foot, how I roll off, or chicken wing. And those were both weapons of mine that when I lost them a little bit, I was playing worse golf. And so actually getting them back is a better thing. You talk about Justin Thomas, the slow-mo of him being off his feet when he's hitting driver. Well, that's an advantage for him. He's using that ground force to push up. That's how he generates so much power. He just doesn't quite stay on the ground for it, which is pretty unique. But all these little things that are, call them, in quotes, not textbook, are weapons that need to be, I think, looked at that way when they're done as well as he does them.
Are you still as confused as you seem to be confused, Scotty, when Tiger was telling you about not taking divots with the swing? Because there's been many videos that I've seen since that would disprove what he was talking about when he's flushing and he doesn't take divots. You looked confused in that video. Were you as confused as it looked?
Yeah, so that was really early in the morning, and it was my first TaylorMade shoot, and we had literally just gone from singing Christmas carols in, like, costumes and then we go out to hit balls. I'd gotten in late the night before from a tournament, and now we're out on the range just warming up. I'm trying to, like, figure out what's going on, what I'm doing. And I look over, and Tiger's not making divots, and I was like,
what's up with that?
What are you doing? And usually he gives me an answer. This time he didn't, and so I haven't seen the video. I don't know what the look on my face was, but I'm sure I was pretty confused because I've asked him some questions in the past, and he's typically given me answers, and this time he was just like, do I need to make a divot? And I was like, I'm asking you, man. You tell me what.
Do you understand it?
I mean, I think to an extent maybe just his control at the bottom is so good, and he gets, maybe his hands in a position where he can have the arc so low to the ground early enough, and he can still hit the middle of the face without making a divot. At the same time, how many videos have you seen him take a massive
huge
pelt
divots
with, like, tons of spin? So I think he was probably messing with Scotty to a degree.
That's what it looked
I think
like.
he had to have been.
You're trying to figure that out in the moment. I think it.
But
felt
I
like
think he can do anything. So maybe, maybe it was what he was trying to do at the time. I don't know. I haven't seen the video either. I just know that.
I'm sure there was definitely some level of him clowning with me at that time.
Yeah.
Do you guys like still are able? I've seen videos of guys playing practice rounds and kind of messing around with different shots and stuff, and it seems like I'm kind of amazed at you guys still seeming to be very curious about different techniques of the way to hit certain shots. Like, Scotty, do you feel like you're still learning how to do specific stuff? Because again, we're talking to somebody who seems like he has the complete package, yet at the same time, I feel like guys are always tinkering and learning new techniques in a weird way.
Yeah, I feel like I learn a lot by watching guys, and now that we're out on tour every week, I get to play with guys that are playing their best golf, and so I get to learn a lot just by watching, and I feel like I can see a lot of stuff, and then if I ever have a question, I'll ask, and most of the time people will give answers. Sometimes they don't, but I always like kind of just figuring out that type of information. Like, I've asked Jordan a ton of questions when we play golf here at home just because it's a more relaxed atmosphere than in a tournament, but yeah, I feel like I'm still learning.
What's something you would ask him? Like, what's something you would want an example of, or technique-wise?
I feel like when we just play around out here, it's the conditions change. Like, in the wintertime, we play this golf course, the greens are a little bit firmer. In the summertime, they're a lot softer, so you're trying to take off spin. And so I just get curious just about more so what's going through his mind on certain shots, especially when he gets around the greens and on them. And so, yeah, I love picking his brain.
Do you still feel like you're learning in that regard, Jordan?
Yeah, I think so. I'll credit my coach, Cameron, a lot for certain shots, especially around the greens where, it might be a new way to hit a bunker shot that he's figured out will help get it higher, softer, and land it shorter. When you get in trouble, it's more like shots when you're potentially in trouble, or kind of different, like wider action. When you get around the greens, it's not a golf swing. They're all different chipping motions to create the loft and spin that you need or need to drop depending on the shot. So I feel like I learned quite a bit from him on that. I'll see some players do some things. I've historically it's been a character flaw of mine to be too stubborn to ask a lot of questions, thinking like I already knew how to do everything. And then you see some guys hit shots and you're like, man, I think I know how you did that. And I'll just, what were you thinking on that? And the thing is, like, for us, I could feel one thing, and if he felt the same thing, it could be totally different, right? So when you ask somebody about their feels on it, it could help, but it may just be like, oh, that's actually doesn't work at all for me. But it's still worth asking those questions. I mean, Tom Kim asks a ton of questions. He's one that asks a ton of questions, but like I'm envious of that at his age, because I think he's got most every shot around the greens. That's probably the most underrated part of his game, but he'll still be asking how you hit him, even though I just watched him hit it as well or better than I just did, So I think it's something that even at 10 years in right now, it's useful for me to continue to try to do.
I feel like both you guys in a way are kind of big brothering Tom Kim a little bit here in Dallas. Does that seem right? You guys were at dinner last week. What?
I think I've been dad, and Scotty's been big brother.
I think that's fair.
A quick break here to check in with our friends at Serve Pro. You've heard us say a lot of great things about Serve Pro. You never want to have to be calling them, but trust me, I've been there when you need them. I've got a great message from someone recently that said, hey, we had a flooding happen at our house. Serve Pro was top of mind because you guys have been talking about them so much. They will make any disaster like it never even happened. If your business needs a mulligan after a disaster, you give the pros at Serve Pro a call. They got over 2,000 locations covering 97% of zip codes nationwide. They're able to respond fast. They're there in an instant. They will make it, like I said, they will make it like it never even happened. ServePro.com or call 1-800-SERVE-PRO today. Again, they will cover from anything from fire damage, flood damage. If you have a problem, a local disaster in your home or your business, they will be there to help you out. 1-800-SERVE-PRO today or ServePro.com. Back to Jordan and Scottie. Talk to me, Jordan, a little bit about what I think it's fair to say. I think we've talked about this before, Scottie. That you were probably the 12th man on the Ryder Cup team in 2021.
I think that's probably an official statement.
What was your role in anywhere in that process? I'm curious if any of the players kind of were in the captain's ear to say like, hey, this dude's he's not even close to his ceiling yet, but he is the dude. Were you involved in any of that, or what was that process like?
Yeah, I think East Lake. I remember Strick coming out when I was playing a practice round with Justin and talking to us about it. And, I used a pick there, but Justin was automatically on. But I think I was close enough to where I think Strick kind of was like, you're good. It was it's a weird scenario when you still need a pick, but you feel like you're on it and they're going to pick you. Like right now, I think I'm at I think I just got passed by Keegan. I think I'm like 7th or 8th. And so it's kind of a similar scenario. We keep on talking about the Ryder Cup, but I'm not on the team yet. It'd be nice to get in the tops. Point being, I remember him being out there and both of us being, big-time Scottie bandwagon, saying – because it was tricky because I think Sam Burns missed out. They're really close. There's a number of other really good players that were right around there, and it kind of was coming down to one or two spots at the end. And just thought his ability to adapt in a team room, play with anybody, kind of I thought a lot about 2014 for me. I didn't win that season in 2014, but I qualified via points for the team, and the way I played at the way I felt about that Ryder Cup, I've talked about this a lot of times, I thought was pivotal in learning how to win. The patience, and like every match feels like it's a Sunday coming down the stretch trying to win a golf tournament. So you just don't really have that experience unless you don't have that anywhere else. And I thought it was a massive step in the right direction for me to learn how to close tournaments and to win at the professional level into the end of 14 into 15. And I don't know if Scottie felt that was that. I mean, it's easy to look at that and be like, oh, well, then look at his next couple of years. But that was the experience for me. And I think at the time I was thinking like he doesn't need to do anything differently. And I think he'll see this at the Ryder Cup. Like he didn't need to change anything he was doing as far as his game. It was already good enough. It was just the putts will go in one day and then all of a sudden you'll feel like a killer,
Well, it just seemed like a changing of the guard moment in terms of, I feel like past Ryder Cup teams would say, never played in one and hasn't won yet and not get the consideration. But it felt like, obviously there was enough. You had played awesome golf leading up to that point, and it helped springboard, your career to this point. What's it like for you, Scottie? You've been a part of one Ryder Cup team. You won 19-9, one of the biggest gaps that's happened yet. You're picking up on a team that, you're going across the pond, teams you haven't been a part of. You haven't played an away Ryder Cup yet the U.S. hasn't won since 1993. So does it feel like you personally feel like you're carrying any burden over to Rome of any of that? Or having not been a part of those teams, does that help to not feel that?
I would say a burden would probably not be the way to describe it, but I'm definitely carrying something over because I've watched many of the Ryder Cups that we've lost, and it's definitely frustrating. The Ryder Cup's my favorite tournament, and I don't like losing whether or not I'm on the team or not. And that was something that we discussed, I felt like a lot after last year's Ryder Cup was, we kind of protected our home turf, and now we got to go over there. And, since 93, that's a long time. I feel like I don't want it to last much longer than that.
Well, because you took the mic, if I remember right, in 2021, somebody was asked a question about unfinished business, and it kind of felt to me like you went a little bit out of your way to be like, hand up here. Yeah, there is unfinished business.
Well,
we're
I
carrying
was the only
this.
one on that team that's lost 2 of them over there.
Yeah.
And so it's all fun and games, and then you go over there, and it's just not the same. We don't get an away game in the sport of golf hardly ever. That's the only time we get one is team events played on foreign soil, and even the President's Cup doesn't normally feel like an away game. I believe Canada probably will more than anywhere else. But, yeah, I took it, and I think that because the question was about, is this a new dynasty of – and it's like, no, because you have to win one over there and preferably a couple over there for it to really be that way. But it was a step in the right direction at Whistling Straits.
We're left to kind of talk about all this stuff and try to figure out, what matters in terms of team makeup and who should make the team, course fit, all this stuff. In your guys' mind, kind of, I guess, what does the public get wrong about how this works? Right? I feel like every time somebody wins a tournament, it's like, oh, well, he's now going to be on the Ryder Cup team. Would you guys rather have teammates that have like up and down, hot, kind of peak weeks, but aren't as consistent, or do you want guys that are consistently, top 10 and top 20 more frequently? If you had to choose between those two.
I think that I'm not jealous of the captains in that scenario because the last few, it seemed like it's come down to 4 for 2 or 3 for 1, and it's like, man, how do
it's
you?
Tough.
How
Looking
do you
really crowded right now on the U.S. side too.
That would be answer the question: who are you looking for out of the 4, out of the 2, out of the 4, or the 1 out of the 3? And it's like, you just can't go wrong. That's the good news, but. I don't know, what do you think?
I was going to say, looking back at the last one, if you went by like current form, I did not have a good playoffs. I had played good up until that point, but I think the last 3 events, all I could think about was the Ryder Cup, and I played just terrible. And so current form's also a tough one. I think it's more of an attitude thing that you can kind of bring to whether or not a guy's going to be good in the team room, how he's going to be out there in his matches. I think playing good in the bigger tournaments is important. The majors are the most pressure that we face as players, and so guys that can perform on that stage, I think are going to be typically guys that we want on that team. But there's so much that goes into those last few spots that it's tough.
How have you seen the team room evolve? You've been on a lot of Ryder Cup teams now. Does it feel different in there now?
What year is your first one?
14 first Ryder Cup. Yeah, I played the President's Cup in 13. The 14 Ryder Cup was an interesting one. So
what was interesting?
Let's throw that one out.
What was that team room like, though? Because everything changed after that point, right?
I remember the. How could you forget the post-tournament press conference?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But Tom Watson's in the middle and Phil's on the far right side. Well, if you rewatch that, I'm sitting next to Zach Johnson in the middle. There's maybe 1 or 2 other guys in the middle of this. And when Phil takes the mic and starts going, we start kicking each other like under the table. You can't see it. It was all, draped. But we're kicking each other, and we're like, oh, here we go. This is going to be it's changed. It's changed. Definitely for the better. I think at this point now you have most everybody is around the same age, grew up with each other, are friends. I won't be if I'm on this team, I won't be the youngest on. I won't be the oldest on this team, but I will have had probably the most cups of experience.
You'll feel like the oldest to us.
But it doesn't. Yeah, but then you have a group of 3 or 4 guys that are Scotty's age, and then you have a bunch that are around 30, like 28 to 31 or whatever, call it. And so you have. It's younger, it's more cordial, it's more fun. And then I think what the Ryder Cup committee has done since I think it was established in 16, 18?
15, right after 14, right, yeah.
Was I felt like at Whistling Straits, we all were able to feel like we had the best chance to prepare individually and have every opportunity to do what we wanted, when we wanted, how to recover, access to, and that wasn't the case in the early ones. It was, no, the team's all going to do this here. No, we can't get this. We can't get this. And since then, it's been, we got 2 giant ice buckets to do ice baths on the floor that we're on. Everyone's kind of got their own routine that makes them successful. But then once you do that collectively, you still have that feel like you're there fighting for the other guys. I mean, I think I never feel like I'm playing for my country in the Ryder Cup. I feel like I'm playing for the other guys on that team more than anything else, versus maybe how an Olympics would feel.
There's continuity now too. Like there's a lot of the same captains, and it feels like, and this is not to say that they're necessarily bad in the team room, but Tiger and Phil just took up a lot of energy, and you know what I mean. Like it kind of everything in golf revolves around them when they're around, and if they're not, this was the first team that had neither of those 2 guys on it, and the energy felt different. I'm not saying better or worse, but just felt totally different.
I think Tiger's not getting any credit for how involved he was and how selfless it was for him not to come for almost that very reason, and he recognized it. For somebody that great, he doesn't really, I don't feel he has an ego. And like he wants to win, and he felt like the best case was to not be a distraction by going, but I mean, he was super involved. And I don't know if people really realize that much.
Is he as involved this year?
I think he will be, as much as anyone's willing to talk to him. Zach or Strick and Tiger are close. Zach and Tiger are close. Obviously, Freddie. So I imagine he'll be pretty involved in helping them out. But he wasn't getting into our stuff. It was with the captains, and
Scottie, if you look back at the first 3 majors of the year, you played really good golf in all 3 of them. Do you look back at them fondly? Do you look back and feel like you've missed opportunities? Do you consider them successes so far this year? I'm wondering if we're taking stock as of today, what's your feeling?
First 3, I feel like I've played solid, which is nice. I don't really look at success for wins and losses. I think I would say the last 2 majors they were a success in my head because I approached them the right way. When I show up to an event, I try to have a good attitude. I try to approach my shots in a positive way and basically just stay in the moment and try and execute. And I felt like the Masters, I didn't do as good of a job of that. I kind of got in my own way a little bit. And then the last 2, I just, I did a really good job of that. Good attitude pretty much the whole way around. I stayed patient. I just was a few shots off. I think I was 2 or 3 at the U.S. Open, and I was about the same at the PGA. But, yeah, I'm proud of my approach those weeks. So, yeah, I think I did a good job.
It feels like right now you're in a window right now in major championships where leaderboard gravity, as we call it, the more time goes on, the more you kind of rise to the top of these things, right? It feels like you have, the harder it gets, the better off you are. Do you feel that way?
I like harder golf courses. I feel like, I guess the last 2 weeks would be a good example, going from U.S. Open to Travelers. The U.S. Open, I felt like I could have a bad day and still be in the middle of the tournament.
Right.
I think for me that day was Friday, where the U.S. Open was different than a lot of majors in a sense where everybody who was up on top of the leaderboard kind of had what seemed like that one really hot day. Like Wyndham had a hot first 2 rounds, I think, where he got all the way to the leaderboard. Ricky had the really hot day, the first round to get up to the top. I just never had that hot stretch. I kind of just played the consistent golf, and I wasn't able to shoot, a 600 or 700 to make my way up there. But then you go to a tournament like Travelers, and I have a bad day, and I feel like I can't catch up. Whereas the U.S. Open, I played pretty poorly on Friday. I think it was my driver face caved in. I couldn't hit a fairway. I was hitting everything like 50 yards left of the fairway, and I was able to get around the golf course and shoot 1 or 2 under just by scrambling. Whereas if I'm hitting everything 50 yards left of the fairway at Travelers, I can't make birdies. Right. I still make pars. At U.S. Open, you can get around making pars and still compete. Whereas some of the regular stops on tour, I feel like I have to be playing my best all the time in order to compete.
How would you describe your relationship, either with putting or your putter at the moment? I know there's some flirting that's gone on with others.
Yeah, flirting's probably a good way to describe it. I've used the same style putter for maybe 6 or 7 years. I switched to one at the U.S. Open and Travelers that was a similar shape to one that I used in high school. I won a U.S. Junior with a putter that was kind of a boxy shape, And for me, I just felt like I needed to look at something a little different, and the results were definitely better the last 2 weeks. I still didn't make enough putts to win the tournament, but I think I was above average. I don't know. It felt like I was, which is, improvement from the weeks before that. But it's hard to make that many putts when I'm hitting it as good as I am, because you get onto the greens. I can't really choose where you putt from. I don't get to see any breaks. I'm playing late every single week, and most of the guys you see playing late are making all the putts, whereas if the hole's looking a little smaller to me, all of a sudden the ball starts moving around late in the day. It's not easy to make putts. Haven't really had too many of those rounds where you get out early and the greens are fresh, and so there's a lot of different factors.
Nice. I was gonna say that's such a flex. I'm playing so late in the day.
No, but it's something that, because I have to tell myself these things, because if I look at the stats and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm putting terrible, but when I look back at how I felt on the greens, the only week where I felt really bad was probably Memorial. Outside of that, I've actually felt like I've rolled it really nice. Like PGA, I hit so many good putts. I think I lost that one by 2, and I had 2 like horrendous horseshoes in the final round. I don't even know if they got them on the coverage, but I had a terrible slow lip out on 1, and I had a trickle horseshoe down the hill on number 9, which I've never seen a ball trickle towards the hole and horseshoe. And so little stuff like that. Sometimes those putts go in, and then I gain momentum, and then I'm able to build up a lead like I did at the Masters. And sometimes the putts don't go in and you don't win. But at the end of the day, the putts have to fall if you want to win tournaments. And so I'm proud of how I've just been able to put myself in position a lot this year.
Yeah, they're getting to the hole and they're going right by the hole. It feels like they're not far off, right? That's got to be, I guess, how you handle that becomes the question.
Well, yeah, putting's kind of difficult because it's the only part of the game where there's just finality attached to it. If I hit a really good 9-iron into the green and I hit it exactly how I want to, sometimes it goes to a couple feet and sometimes it goes to 15 feet. But no matter what, I still have the opportunity. If I have a 10-footer and I hit a really good putt and I miss it, everybody's like, oh, how come he didn't make that putt? Whereas if I hit a really good 9-iron, you guys don't really know the difference between 3 feet and 15 feet, and sometimes it's even hard for us to tell. And so I'm trying to get out of my head that you have to make every putt and I have to win every tournament. It all goes back to the approach for me.
Soly hit 3 feet versus 15 feet. He'll know the difference because it doesn't happen that
Oh,
often.
come on. I hit it to 3 feet at Kapalua.
You can rake the 3-footer.
Well, I hit it to
that make
3
sense?
feet. Yeah, it does. It really does. I hit it 3 feet at Kapalua, and JT missed the putt. Look, I'm going to throw him under the bus because he was killing me that day. What's your relationship?
You could have been my partner. We would have lost in 7 holes.
That would have been. That's very true. That's very true. We need to rematch that one. That was a lot of fun. What's your relationship like with putting right now, Jordan?
Yeah, good. It's I guess it's not really my place to chime in on Scotty's, but I will say like the strokes gain
chime in.
The strokes gain statistic, it's nearly impossible to be in the top 30 or 40 if you're hitting the amount of greens he's hitting relative to everybody else. It's just almost impossible because the putts that he has on a green are a further average length because he's on more greens in regulation. So if you miss 5 15-footers, you're losing strokes versus I may have had 5 6-footers and I made 4 of the 5 and I gained strokes. Well, he would have made 4 of the 5 too. And then at the same time, so if you just took a strokes gained and put everybody else in the same position on the green in 1, or in 2, whatever. I don't know if this is making sense.
It does a little bit, but strokes gained. I see what you're saying, right? If you have a day where you have a bunch of 6-footers and you make them all, you're going to shoot up, and it's like, hey, I don't know if I'd have had the same day from 15 feet, but it's. I guess strokes gained does account for the fact that
the thing I think that's tricky about it is being able to recognize that and being like Scotty's saying, he's like, I felt like I hit my lines that day and the speed I wanted to. The greens were a little beat up because I was late every single Sunday is pretty much what he's saying, but which is just fantastic. But my point is, like, if you go and you say, I don't do anything differently and they're going to go in, that's essentially what he's been doing the last couple of years, and then when they do, he wins.
I think there's something also to what you were saying, Scotty, of if you're hitting a lot of greens, you're not trying to leave it below the hole, or
you don't have as much control over it.
Don't.
Like if I'm miss at green side and I'm chipping, you naturally know where to not put the ball.
Yeah,
and that's something where if you're hitting a 6-iron into the green, you're just trying to kind of work it into an area, and you're kind of left with whatever you have. But it's actually funny. John and I played together Sunday at Memorial, and he putted really poorly at Memorial as well. And so we were both out there after the rounds multiple times together practicing our putting. And he said something really funny to me. He had a slow year on the greens last year where he hit it really well and didn't putt his best, and so that's why you didn't see the crazy amount of wins. And then all of a sudden this year he starts out beginning of the year and he's winning all the time. And he said the difference between his putting last year versus this year is one 10-footer made or two 10-footers made per tournament.
Yep. It's a crazy margin.
And so it's funny how that stuff works. And like if I'm going to sit back there, and it's stuff I talk with Teddy about too, don't overthink things. Don't get too far into the data and put too much pressure on yourself. Like John said, the difference between last year and this year is two 10-footers a tournament, which is pretty insane.
It's skewed. It's skewed, minorly skewed. It's a nice reference, but it can be skewed.